Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for checking out my video. This is Community Questions 11, the segment where I open up the old community tab on YouTube and you very generously share your thoughts and questions with me, and I address them here in this format. Thank you. I ended up leaving it open a little bit longer than I expected, so I got an awful lot of questions, and I am going to do my absolute best to get to every one of them in a reasonable amount of time. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. If you haven't yet, I hope you'll do so now. There are many ways that you can support my channel. Those are in the description below the little index. What I've done is I just kind of give you like the time code. So if you want to skip around a little bit, look at this question, look at that question, get this answer, get that answer, see what we're talking about, you can do so there. You don't have to use the whole video or kind of search through it. It's all there in the description. I, for one, have got my coffee, so I am ready to rock and roll. I am, for those of you who are curious, sporting a hat today, because this week I learned just how short a one guard is, and I was not expecting it. So you'll be seeing this hat for a couple videos for a while here. Okay. I'm a basso profundo, and I do have a lot of trouble making the lip trill. This is a very common thing. I heard the lip trill is an exercise one does to make the vocalization easier and to ease into note one have hard time singing. But in my case, I find it more difficult than singing the actual notes. I feel like all the air goes out of my body really fast. Should I try to practice it anyway? Maybe quieter or smoother, or avoid it and sing the notes normally? Thanks. Okay, lots of folks have problems with the lip trill. The lip trill is a great exercise. It's not the end-all be-all of vocalizations or voice exercises. It is a semi-occluded exercise is the category it's in, because it takes some of the weight of the air column off of your voice. It can allow the vocal folds to change shape more easily. This is very helpful when you're working through your registration event. In addition, the lip trill, when you do it like to a song that you're working on or something like that, can show you when you are breaking phrases, when your engagement, or more commonly called support, is changing or perhaps isn't really as engaged as would be helpful for that point in the song. The lip trill shows us a lot of things. The best suggestion I can make is on my website, jeffrolka.com, the AAA method exists. And in that method, I go into quite deep detail on how to establish the lip trill. Most of my videos here on YouTube kind of assume that you can basically do the lip trill. They just kind of use it as part of the vocalization. But in the method, the AAA method, it goes from soup to nuts, as one might say, as far as establishing the lip trill is concerned. And once it's going, if you've got reasonably good consistency of engagement, you'll probably be able to maintain it. Now, from the sound of what you've got going on there, it may be that your vocal folds are really widely abducting or separating when you're trying to do the lip trill. Maybe just do a general kind of hum, or whatever you like. I really like to advocate using your hand in the side of your face. What that does is it means you can let the muscles in your face relax. They don't have to, kind of be using as much muscle tension to keep the lips closed if you're doing the lip trill without your hand. From my opinion, that means there's that much more release of muscle engagement, which is good. And furthermore, I don't know that it actually makes the lip trill any easier, because I've watched people struggle with it, with the hand, without the hand, all sorts of different stuff. But there are some tricks on that method, and I should say the method doesn't cost anything. I'm not like trying to upsell you on that method, and I probably should have mentioned that earlier when I started addressing this comment, but whatever. All you got to do is sign up for the newsletter, and then you can get into the method and check that out and see if it works. You can always unsubscribe later. That's like, there's no obligations of any kind. So that would be my starting point for you, and hopefully you can establish lip trill and get moving from there. Jeff, this is my favorite warm-up I've used recently, but I have one issue with it. The warm-up ends up leaving my throat fatigued where my actual singing is minimal following. Any tips or videos you can redirect me to so that I reduce my overall fatigue? Do these muscles get stronger with more experience? Thanks for all your enormous help. Thank you. I appreciate your kindness, and I appreciate the ability to talk about this a little bit. I should have made a note of which video that was on, or it would be helpful to know what it was. It'd also be helpful to kind of know where you're at with your singing in general. Although personal reflections and things like that can sometimes vary from what's actually occurring when we're singing. It sounds like, so if you're getting fatigued, there's some kind of imbalance. That's why we get fatigued when we're singing. We're using our voice in a way that is requiring more vocal fold engagement than is really great. In other words, like, we're singing in a range that requires more airflow, but instead of using that kind of air, we're making up for it with vocal fold engagement. Conversely, if you had like a really wispy, airy, falsetto-y kind of a sound, and that was part of your performance ethos, if that's what you're doing when you're singing your repertoire, that too takes a lot of tension around the vocal fold to hold the separation in place. And that can get tiring. When we get fatigued that way, it is an indication of an imbalance, intended or unintended. And the thing to do to resolve it is to come back and figure out what is the appropriate balance for the vocal fold in a given range. So here, me, 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 for example, is probably about the most balanced part of my overall range. Lower down, we're going to allow for a little bit more vocal fold engagement. Higher up, we want to have a bit more airflow available so that the vocal fold isn't trying to squeeze together to make those pitches, when it's better served by allowing it to elongate and having appropriate subglottic air pressure. Short vowel exercises that segue into melismatic phrases can be very helpful and can indicate to you how you are using your voice and how you might better balance out airflow and vocal fold engagement. Hi Jeff, any suggestions on how to get a husky tone like Seal in Kiss from a Rose? So experimentation is your friend in this regard. That's probably going to require a slightly lowered slightly lowered laryngeal position. In other words, a little bit of a lowered larynx with a slight amount of abduction or separation of the vocal fold. Practice this in really comfortable areas of your voice to start with, and then experiment with what your voice can do in the surrounding areas as you expand the range outwards. Keep in mind that when you do these kinds of exercises that are outside the realm of balanced phonation, it's interesting that this question comes right after the other question. These are outside the realm of balanced phonation, so they can be more fatiguing. They can mean that you can only have a shorter period to practice, and there may be some deleterious effects afterwards. You will have to judge whether or not those are acceptable. If they're too great, then dial it back. Come back to neutral and experiment again with a little bit less of the affectation. Additionally, this is probably going to sound a bit comical. I don't intend it to sound that way, but in any case, you might try this with an vowel, to see what you get from your voice and whether or not you like it, and if you can pursue it further, to then get into melismatic singing. Start with short vowel syllables like I just showed you. Ha, 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 ha. And then move on from there. Again, we're looking for the balance that gives us the best use of our voice, but still has the affectation. You're moving outside of neutral tone production for your voice, probably. And so there can be some fatigue and things like that. It may also limit your range. Those are the things that come along with this. When you're moving into the other areas of your voice, it may be that you have to then get back into a more neutral mode of phonation to access your upper register effectively, or things like that. Or you may also find that when you have done that huskier tone quality in a more comfortable area, and then you move up into your upper register, maintaining some of the affectation, that you like it. Nothing wrong with that. Just realize that the more and more that you do of that, it would be best to come back to neutral just to make sure you're staying in good, sustainable vocal health. You want to keep on being able to do this for as long as you want to sing. Jeff, could you please share some tips for learning how to play the piano when one is a voice teacher? How does one get better at playing scales and transposing songs and playing them on the keys? Awesome, awesome question. First and foremost, you can start with your own vocalizations. So just getting comfortable doing a 5-note scale. You don't even have to really do it the way that finger patterns, like if you were a piano player, playing your scales, there's one way that you would do these scales. And then if you're just kind of playing a 5-note scale, you don't really have to do that. I kind of mix it up. I do a little bit of each when I'm teaching and when I'm making the videos here on YouTube. But start with your own personal practice. Dedicate a little bit of time from your vocal practice period to accompanying yourself. I would say, just to get the ball rolling, if you don't already know your scales on the piano, just stick to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to keep things simple, to keep it moving, and then apply your scale finger patterns from your piano teachings to it at a later date. As far as playing chords and transposing, I would start with the simplest form of the chord as is necessary for you to be able to adequately stay in time and accompany. So that might mean only a tonic and third in the right hand, or even just the third in the right hand in the bass note. Oops, not that one. More like that. Just so that you get the harmonic context for what you are playing. If you are a trained pianist, you may have been more comfortable playing the chords in your left hand and the melody in your right. That may be a bit of a shift to putting more of the chordal notes in the right hand and covering bass and bass lines in the left. That is, however, how we mostly comp chords. It's not to say that we don't do what you've done in the past, but mostly if you're comping chords, you're playing all of the juicy notes, like the thirds, the sevenths, things like that, in your right hand, and then the bass and bass lines, open fifths, octaves, things like that in the left. Transposing, it's probably going to differ from person to person. For me, I think about it in Roman numerals. So if I'm playing chord change and I know it's 1, 4, 5, 1, it doesn't really matter what key I'm in. I can pretty much always do that. And most popular songs, even a lot of more complicated songs from musical theater, I almost want to say like standard jazz and things like that too, are diatonic. They break down into fairly reasonable and accessible Roman numeral analysis. So yes, when you start getting into jazz, you're getting like a lot of chordal extensions. However, it's still going to primarily be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until there's a modulation of some point, which does happen, and then you have to change your Roman numeral analysis to accommodate it, unless it's a very short period, in which case then you can think about it as being adapted to the Roman numerals from the original key. Sorry, going off the deep end there. Roman numerals are my friend in terms of transposing quickly and easily on the fly. Even as the songs get more complicated, having done it for a long time and committed to that practice, I find I can still do it pretty effectively. Some may find that it's easier to think about moving up a given number of semitones or down a given number of semitones when looking at the chord changes. If that works for you, that's great. Basically, figure out what works for you and go forth from there. It's probably going to take a lot of practice, and at some point you will find too, I suspect, that your typical method isn't working for you for a given song, and then using some of the other methods that you tried out when you were figuring out what worked best for you will come into play. Case in point, there are times when I just find that I can't process the changes in Roman numeral analysis, and so I'll think about it intervallically. In other words, instead of thinking about the Roman numerals and 4, 5, 2, 2, 6, 4, 5, whatever it might be, I'll think A, but I'm 2 semitones up, so it's B, E is F sharp, G is A, so on and so forth. Hi, Jeff. I've been struggling for a while with my voice. Even though I don't feel that I'm producing any tension with my throat, because I'm singing in a comfortable range, after a few songs my voice starts to sound quite tired. Especially my falsettos, which start to sound more airy than they used to. And obviously my range decreases dramatically. I've tried drinking more water, some exercises, and even massages, but any of those seem, but none of those seem to solve the problem in the long term. What could I be doing wrong and how could I fix it? So there's a couple things in there, not the least of which is I don't feel that I'm producing any tension. Feelings are subjective and they don't necessarily indicate what's happening. If you're getting that tired, there is some type of imbalance that is occurring during your phonations, whether you feel that way or not. It doesn't have to be a huge imbalance in order for it to tire you out prematurely and mean that your practice sessions or singing sessions aren't as long as they used to be. Falsetto tone production in the falsetto range of the voice is reasonably balanced, but many people produce falsetto tones outside of that range. That is in fact a fairly vocal fold engagement-wise tense position to hold, because you are holding the vocal folds separated to a certain degree when they would function more efficiently if they were elongated and adducted or closed. That too can be working to fatigue you, and that would also contribute to your diminishing availability of range. My advice to you is similar to what I mentioned to one of the earlier comments. Come back to a comfortable range, as you indicate from your comment, but do shorter vowel exercises. We, you, may. Try those out and then segue into melismatic patterns. May. If the tone matches over the entirety of the scale to what you were creating with the short ones, then you're in a reasonable place of balance. Things are more or less balancing out, and you might be able to expand outwards from there and experiment with more of your range. If there's a change in volume, a change in tone quality, a change in intonation quality, in other words, some are in tune and others are not in tune, something's not right. There is an imbalance, even if it doesn't feel like it, and that needs to be addressed. The short vowel exercises can help you diagnose that. Your observational skills will have to come into play in order to hear the vowels, hear the adjustments, hear what's happening, and then work forward from there. Hi, I'm Joaquin. My question is, I should to sing with the mouth very opened or not? And how to sing without pressure. Ultimately, we want to be able to allow our jaw to open and close so that it's in the position appropriate to the vowel and consonant combination that we are singing in our songs. A good practice for this is just, if you're doing your scales, start with it at a sort of neutral hung position, again, depending on range and vowel, and then just gradually open and close it over the duration of the scale. The thing here is to be gradually in motion, not locked here and popped and then locked. So, it's just a nice little practice to make sure that our jaw can stay in motion. What's the second half of that? How to sing without pressure. I think what you mean by that is too much pressure, because we have to have subglottic air pressure to sing. That's how the whole thing works. Like many of the other, well, two others, I guess it's not many really just yet. We'll see how we go. But like two previous comments, short vowel exercises will help you equalize subglottic air pressure and vocal fold engagement such that you get good, efficient tone production. How would one go about singing better for musical theater? Overall, tone production is, of course, key there. So practicing your scales, working on your registration events. I think musical theater people have a lot more work than they are generally given credit for when it comes to singing, because a lot of times the range requirements can be even greater than you might find in other repertoire that is typically more thought of as being more advanced, if you get my drift. And yet, and this is where the real trick comes in, the onus on being understood is quite high for those who are singing musical theater. So like, if you're singing opera, there are opera singers that will readily change vowels and phrases to suit their phonation needs in order so that they get efficient tone production. But you can't do that in theater. You have to be able to sing in a fashion that your audience can understand you. So your technique really has to be flexible. You really have to be on top of it. There is this great myth that all theater is belting, 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 and I need to do my research and find the theater star who said this, but it's just not true, I'm sorry to say. And this is the problem, is that there was a very famous theater vocalist who, like, after she had retired, came out and said, like, you know, everyone always thought I was belting. I was always making my registration events. I was always crossing into my head voice. And it perpetuates this myth around the belted voice, which is just not true. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you not to belt. If you want to belt, go for it. If that's really what your art requires, by all means, do that. Know that it comes with certain limiting factors. Know that it comes with certain fatigue factors. Know that it can perhaps cause problems, although the people who are practitioners of it would claim that that's only when you're doing it wrong, but know that it comes with the potential for problems later on. And furthermore, know that there are at least some people whom I have observed teaching how to belt but they're actually teaching you to make the transition into your head voice. That's really what's happening. So, okay, soapbox removed. Sorry about that. Let's carry on from there, shall we? Let's calm down with some caffeinated beverage. How would one go about singing better? Oh, that's the one I was just doing. Hi, Jeff. How can I release tension in my throat while singing? Again, I feel like the question is probably how to have the appropriate amount of tension. Because if you sang with the vocal folds absolutely flaccid, then nothing would happen. They would never adduct or close, and you would produce no tone. So what you would get would be something to the effect of, and much as that might feel nice, that's not really going to do it for us if we're trying to sing something. Short vowel exercises, those are your friends. Those will help you figure out the right balance. When you can produce consistent tone quality with a short vowel syllable in a comfortable range, try melismatic exercises. And if everything is staying consistent, then you can start to explore vowel combinations and expanding outwards from there to get more range, getting into the registration event and all those kinds of things. That's how we find the neutral pressure, if you will. Okay, these two go together. Is there any key difference between learning transitioning through the primo passaggio and secondo passaggio, or would the same concepts apply to both, by and large? How to switch between head voice and chest voice, and vice versa. Okay. The same concepts are not applied to the primo and secondo passaggio for a given vocalist. In other words, for me to sing across my primo passaggio is a different process than going across the secondo passaggio. The secondo passaggio is the point after which we are said to be in cricothyroid dominant singing voice, so-called head voice. And below that, we are in our chest voice, our thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. The space right below the secondo passaggio is called the zona de passaggio. And it is in that area that we make the incremental changes in order to make a smooth transition across. The primo passaggio is the point at which these incremental changes begin. So below the primo passaggio, you're really thyroarytenoid dominant, and then above the primo passaggio, you begin to get increasingly cricothyroid dominant until you are over the secondo passaggio, and then you are cricothyroid dominant head voice. But really, below the secondo passaggio, you're still thyroarytenoid dominant. You're not out of your chest voice at that point, but you're beginning the transition. So the techniques are not really the same. The thing is, though, is that for the soprano vocalist whose primo passaggio is here, you can actually use some of the concepts from the male vocal realm to address that, because that primo passaggio can, for the soprano vocalist, sometimes be more difficult than their secondo passaggio, particularly if in their middle voice range, which for the soprano typically extends from about here to here, again, give or take for individual differences. That middle voice range in the classically trained vocalist is typically more onto the side of the cricothyroid dominant. And so that soprano will sing past the secondo passaggio without noticing it, the same way that a tenor might sing past his primo passaggio without even noticing it. So some of the aspects can be applied, but they don't apply directly to the same voice that's working over their individual registration events. Occasionally, it's conceivable that you might have a vocalist who's struggling so much with the primo passaggio that some of those concepts may be more germane to helping them out with that, but in general, that's not the case. Oh, and as far as going back and forth between them seamlessly, my entire channel is about that. You can literally dive in anywhere and start that process. Mostly, it's about making those incremental changes through the zona de passaggio. far too frequently, we as vocalists develop the habit of pushing harder and harder and harder, trying to stay in our chest voice as long as we can, and then we don't get that smooth transition. But that's because we've insisted on that vocal fold engagement for such a degree, you know, so far above where the natural transition point is, that there's no ability to get the elongation and the vocal fold to stay adducted, and to have that all work in parity with the kind of tension that you're carrying from the thyroarytenoid voice. Hi Jeff, do you have any tips how to keep your voice from drying out on stage? Good luck with your great work. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. That's a tough one. Kind of depends on the environment. If you're in a gigging rock band at a club, then you can certainly have some water that's close by and you can sip on it. You might also have a nice room temperature concoction of tea that can keep you a little bit lubricated. You know, think like a little ginger, a little honey, a little lemon maybe, but test that out before you take it on a gig. If you're on a theater stage, this can be more challenging because you're in the middle of a drama and you may not be able to just grab a bit of water. I would also suggest to you that your life before you step on stage and in between the times that you are on stage could have something to do with it. So like me, I really like hot sauce. I eat way too much hot sauce, but I just love it. I love the tang and the heat and the spice and the different chipotles and habaneros and all the different varieties are just delicious. But I know that this is horrible for me. It makes me create way too much mucus, and then I drink more water, and it doesn't really help. And there's also like the salt and sugar component in some of these concoctions. None of that helps. And I know it, and it kind of makes me sad. But that's life. I just know that if I have critical work to do, if I have critical singing, that I can't have any hot sauce, you know, several hours before. And really, I should probably knock it off, like, you know, for that day if I can manage, which, you know, like, it's not that big of a deal, really. But I digress. Scope out your environmental factors. Scope out how you are eating, drinking, what's your diet like, all those different things that can contribute to systemic dehydration or systemic fluid loss or an overall kind of predisposition towards that kind of dryness. Subtle food allergies that don't really knock you out but also aren't helping might be worth looking into to a certain extent. I would look at all of those things and see if it's not one or two things, it might be the combination of a wide variety of things. Case in point, I used to love peppermint tea, and I would drink this until I really got into a kick of it, and then I started going to rehearsals, and like my voice was just not happy at all. And I quit drinking the peppermint tea, and things got a lot better. I also learned this about oolong tea. Though I love oolong tea, I know that I cannot drink it at all when I have to sing. It just really dries me out. It's not going to be like that for everybody. You're going to have to do some experimenting and observations with your own voice and see if you can figure that one out. Is there a specific way to develop good tone balance? If you want, and well, first of all, define good tone. I mean, people love Tom Waits. Is his tone good? People love Bob Dylan. Is Bob Dylan's tone good? People love Sting. They love Chris Martin. They love Ed Sheeran. All of these vocalists have slightly different tones. Someone mentioned Seal. Beautiful tone. What about Billie Eilish? What about that? All of these tones are different. I would suggest to you that discovering your point of balance with your tone is where to begin. Moving from there, you can decide more about what you wish to sound like in your artistic pursuits. Finding balance for your voice starts with those short vowel exercises. That would seem, it's always interesting when like a theme emerges out of these community questions. I always find it really intriguing, like we're all kind of humming somehow, sympathetically. Short vowel exercises will be the way to begin that process. Your tone will develop from there, and you can make more artistic decisions about it once you have that kind of keen awareness and control of your instrument. How to find out places of improvement. How to take your singing to the next level. I'm going to assume that this person already has like really solid neutral tone production and really solid registration event practice and all that kind of stuff. In other words, they are well versed in how the whole thing is working. Critical recording environments would be my suggestion to you. And it doesn't have to be like I'm going to pay $1,000 for my day in the studio. It could just mean I'm setting aside 4 hours and I'm going to record this song and I want to find out what it can take. And so that process becomes one of singing the song, listening to the parts, singing it again, comparing and contrasting the two, trying to listen to it to identify what you like and what you feel isn't quite right, and then following your instincts to see where they lead you. I think that you will find two things in doing that. One, you will find out where the shortcomings are in your technique. You will probably also find out that some of what you thought were your shortcomings are not. That actually you sound quite good. That's always a pleasant surprise. You will also start the process, unless you've already done so. Maybe you'll start the process in earnest. I don't know, because we don't know each other as far as I know. You'll really start the process of finding your artistic flame, like your artistic voice. For example, I really love chord changes that do that. That is an applied dominant 5 of 6. And that was in the key of D major. So you got like D, G, B minor, F sharp major to B minor. That's probably not the most artful combination in progression, but just by way of illustration, I love that applied dominant, that 5 of 6 flavor in a song. How did I learn that? By learning hundreds of songs and noticing that when that one came up, it really grabbed my ear. You can do that when you record yourself. You can listen back and say, okay, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. Oof, that was out of tune, gotta fix that. Huh, that's interesting. And that will guide you forward, in my opinion, in your artistic pursuits. How to train your ears and what is the best USB mic for someone looking to start a little home studio. I just need something that connects to my laptop at the moment. I love gear questions. Who doesn't love gear? I love gear. So first of all, what was the first part of that question? How to train your ears. Solfege. That's a short answer there. Practice your solfege. Doesn't have to be do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Work on solfege, make it a practice, make it a habit. 5 minutes a day, 7 days a week, as much as possible. We're all gonna miss a day once in a while. Just don't miss 2. That's how you're gonna train your ears. Best USB mic. Now, okay. The USB mic that I have heard most frequently is like the Blue Yeti. And I should also say I don't have sponsorships. So I am not in any way endorsed by any of the companies or the equipment that I am about to mention. I buy my own equipment. I've done so thus far, and I expect to probably continue to do so. And even if I were made an offer, I would probably not want to do that anyways because I feel like it would somehow like compromise my validity and objectivity. I did do that one fine video on the stage mic, and even that felt a little bit funny to me, so a couple more of those came in and I said no. The USB Yeti is a solid microphone. I know not less than 2 people whom I am aware of that use the mic, and it sounds delightful and it works really seamlessly. It's great, it's easy, and it plugs right in. Most systems will automatically see it and you are off to the races. Do you hear that but coming? But the fact that it's a USB microphone is somewhat limiting, and my concern when I make gear recommendations is there is the gear that you need today, and there is the gear that you might need tomorrow. And if tomorrow, or maybe a year from now is a better analogy. There's the gear today, gear in a year. Gear today, gear in a year. But that year might come 6 months from today, or it might come in 1 month, or something in between. So I always want to suggest that folks get the gear that is going to serve them for the absolute longest period of time. I certainly have not always managed to do that. We will all buy equipment that we will sell off. Some of it we will regret. I regret selling my Music Man bass, and I regret selling my Dan Electro bass, and I regret selling my Taylor Mini. But it seemed like good ideas at the time. I don't regret selling my AT4033 SE. That mic and I didn't really get along very well. I am grateful to still have my KSM32. It's actually under the piano. You're listening to it right now. And in fact, that is just the KSM. I guess I should mute my lav mic as well. That's the KSM32 that's underneath the piano. And I have had that mic since I've been doing my own studio recordings. And I have loads of other mics that I use all the time, but the KSM32 still comes out of the case. Many people find that the NT1A still comes out of the case. There are USB versions of that mic, but I would argue that getting one with an XLR connection is going to save you money in the long run, even if you have to buy the mic and a USB interface now. Because here's the thing. The Yeti with the USB connection, I don't think has XLR connectors on it. So if you want to get more color in your recordings, if you want a different preamp, if you want to add an interface so you can record more than one channel at a time, the Yeti's not going to do it, and it won't connect into the system. The NT1A or any other microphone that has an XLR jack on it will. And that becomes a long-term investment that you might never actually sell off. That's the other thing I consider as well too, is the resale value of these things. So if you don't like it and you can then sell it later, what it will sell for. I'm not really all that aware of what the resale value on the Yetis is, so I can't really speak to that. But if you spend a little bit more money up front, generally speaking, you will recoup a greater portion of that if you have to get rid of it later on to upgrade or because it's no longer suiting your needs. Case in point, the NT1As, generally you buy them new for $230 or something like that, probably plus tax and shipping. But generally, you'll see them on sale secondhand for $175, $180. That's a pretty good percentage of its original sale price. So you're not really, in the end, if you had to sell it, spending that much of your money. Same thing is true for a lot of other higher priced mics. Suffice to say, the Yeti is a solid microphone. If you're never going to go beyond a USB recording platform and you are absolutely certain of it, then I think you'll be just fine. You might want to check out the Rode NT1A. I believe that comes in a USB configuration, although it might be one of the other Rode mics. Those are very, very good value for money microphones. And I own several Rode mics, and I know others who do too, and it's very good value. Blue is good value too. I don't think with either of those two companies you can go wrong. I'm trying to learn some classical repertoire as part of a music degree, but am struggling to control my soft palate with precision. Are there good exercises to coordinate and stretch it? I'm currently trying to use messa da voce in simple warm-ups. What things can I look for to try to improve? I don't know exactly where you are in this process, so it's hard for me to say just how precise we're talking about here. Learning the repertoire itself isn't necessarily going to teach you any more precision than you might learn from a popular tune. It's how you use your voice and the discretion with which discernment that you apply when listening to yourself. You might benefit from recording yourself, even casually, just like with your phone or something, and evaluating it. Certain exercises like doing that a little bit can draw awareness to the musculature that lifts the soft palate. That might help you become more aware of the muscles and hence be able to control it more precisely. Additionally, the NG exercise can help you to get that feel of what it's like when the soft palate is lifted, the degree to which it is lifting, and what it feels like when you release that tongue position, getting into a vowel sound and trying to maintain it. Those are the things that I would suggest you start off with. Again, don't know exactly where you're at in the process, but hopefully that will help. Hi Jeff, what can I do in order to express more while singing? How is this related with musical agogic? By the way, thank you for all your content, which is really helpful. Okay, so musical agogic, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Accent signs. Kind of depends. Depends on the repertoire, depends on what your intention is. It depends on, could depend on the composer and what their intentions are. In highly notated music, the desired result from any given symbol can be very, very small in relation to other symbols. But again, depending on what's come before you in the performance practice for a given piece, that could be different too. Some pieces are not very highly notated, and yet we're still expected to adhere to certain accenting principles. And additionally, certain time periods of repertoire have given sort of accent forms. I'm thinking of the Baroque period where beat 1 is typically stressed the most, beat 3 is the second most stressed, 2 and 4 after that. You know, like depending on the era of music that you're singing in, that could have an impact on how you interpret it as well. There's just so much that is relative in how we interpret accents that any specifics I could go into, I think, would probably miss the mark. But basically, I think that your best bet is to ask the question, what is the performance practice of this? What does it relate to? If you're not the final say, like if you're learning the piece as part of a piece of theater, you might also have a conversation with your director and see whom they've referenced in the past and see what their thoughts are on how you interpret that piece of music. What was the first part? I have a really fun anecdotal note about this. I asked that question of a fairly famous vocal teacher one time. And I said I wasn't connecting with my audience. I didn't feel like I was expressing myself in my performances. They kind of paused for a moment and said, you know, when you watch someone perform and you're thinking, man, They are really into that. They are really into that song. You have no idea what they're thinking. For all you know, they're thinking about the ham and cheese sandwich that they're about to have once they step off stage. And for those of you who are vegan, tofu and gluten-free soy cheese. Just work with me on that one. They're going to have when they're done with their performance. We don't know what they're thinking. What this person said was, amp up your rhythm. And I don't know, in the years that have gone by, in practicing that, I don't know if they really meant to amp up my rhythm, or if that was a gateway into the inner workings of the song. Because I have found that the more focus I put on rhythm, the more acutely I experience dynamics. And the more acutely I experience dynamics, the more acutely I hear the way that I phrase and curl the edges around the outsides of a vocal line when I'm singing it. And one thing led to another, led to another. And then I felt like I was connecting not only with those for whom I was playing, but also in my own experience. So what I'm saying here is, maybe amp up your rhythm, but think about it as a way into the deeper workings of the melody in the song. Maybe explore your melody and know that that is a pathway into the deeper workings of the song. Any of these things can be inroads. It might be different for you than it was for me. It probably will be. Who knows? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we get there. What matters is that we try. You might try rhythm, just barrel down on the rhythm and see if anything happens. Not? Fine. Try subtleties of dynamics. How are you starting a phrase? Should it be mezzo piano or mezzo forte? Where is it going? And what does that mean? If it's an ascending phrase, well, then I probably better err to the side of mezzo forte in order to allow for more of a crescendo as I ascend up those notes as towards the high part of the phrase. Or maybe not. Ask yourself about the context that it's all in. And I think out of all that, you will find modes of expression that connect with your audience, but also connect with you too. Jeff, I love your channel. Thank you. And I've been steadily using your videos since October 2019. I have a low voice for a female and find I use tenor, alto, and mezzo-soprano videos. Can you make a video that focuses on uniformity of the voice from top to bottom? Keep up the good work. Thank you. There's actually at least a couple of those on the channel, and if I can find links, I'll put them in the description or I'll have it pop up here. Ooh, it's written there. Ooh. How does one develop a better resonance in the lowest parts of our range? Cultivate release, ultimately. And know that the balance of vocal fold engagement to subglottic air pressure or the flow of air is going to shift as we move down there. So if you're trying to stay in your middle range and hold things steady, you're probably going to dampen down resonances inadvertently. Additionally, know thy voice. So for me, resonance in my lower register is different than it would be for more of like a baritone vocalist or something like that. And different for the soprano and the mezzo-soprano and the alto. Our voices function differently in the different areas of our ranges. And so resonance for me here is more of a brilliance. If I tried to be a very dramatic kind of baritone vocalist, I would fail miserably and it would sound not good. So we're going to move on. Hello, Jeff. Thank you for this. You are welcome. My name, I'm only going to leave that out because I don't want to mispronounce your name, and I apologize for my ignorance in this matter. And what I wanted to ask is this. I've been dealing both neck and ear problems since last year, and I'm sorry that you've had, as myself, someone who has tinnitus, I'm really sorry that you're dealing with this. That's why my muscles around my neck and jaw are really tight. My posture isn't great. I have forward head on my neck, tinnitus and hyperacusis on ear. So I've been doing vocal exercises laying on the ground to maintain a healthy neck curve and have a somewhat ideal posture that I don't have when I'm standing. What do you think about it? Is that okay for me to do those exercises like that? Thank you. Yes, I think that's okay. My concern is the difficulty in translating that to an upright position. If you're a performing artist, or if you wish to perform, you're gonna probably have to be able to stand up, or at least sit effectively in a chair. Probably standing would be easier. And so translating from that position to an upright position will have its challenges. My suggestion to you is to just be very, very body conscious as much as you can. You probably already are, but really scan through your physical being, scan through what it feels like, scan through where things are at so that you can try to replicate it, knowing that gravity is going to pull on you differently when you're in that upright position. Bridget here. I've been trying to develop my upper register so it doesn't sound like nails on a chalkboard or reedy and quiet. I don't have much formal training outside of high school voice class, and a few odd lessons. Links to your previous videos would be appreciated. I'll see if I can throw something into the description. How does one develop a well-supported, full-bodied upper register? I was gifted with a baritone chest voice, but have the range to sing mezzo if I could make it work. Actually, I'm not sure if those were the same or the same person, or I'm not sure about that. But in any case, if you want a full-bodied upper register, you need to find balance. To a certain extent, you'll be able to belt somewhere into the range of the secondo passaggio, but getting well above that, in my opinion, requires voce piena in testa, the sound of chest voice in head. How do you do that? You balance your resonance throughout the zona di passaggio, making incremental changes so that the transition over the secondo passaggio is not noticeable to the casual listener. And this means that you can have good resonance response that is similar across those ranges of your voice, and that creates a full-sounding, rather expansive upper register to your voice. The process is in fact all over my channel. That is principally what my channel is about. You can literally begin anywhere. I also have an online course called High Note Bootcamp. You can learn more about that from my newsletter at jeffrolka.com. How to sing with more freedom. I had thought of some witty responses that I summarily dismissed for this one. I don't know exactly what freedom you're referring to. You could mean freedom to feel like you want to sing whatever it is you want to sing on stage. You might be referring to freedom of vocal fold engagement. You might be referring to freedom of movement of your arms. You might be referring to freedom of ability to accompany and sing simultaneously. I just don't know. It's a very wide question. But what I would say about it is, and I think what's interesting about that question is that it addresses, perhaps not directly, but it does in fact address this connection between concept, how we think about how we use our voices, and the reality of the practice. And I think that you will find freedom when these two things have a healthy degree of overlap or are coincidental, they coincide together, so that your concept and your ability to consistently deliver it work together. And in that you will find both artistic and a sort of freedom of comfort in how you feel in your performances. I had gotten over the flu a few weeks ago, and I feel as if my singing voice has lowered in quality. Not unusual. My question is this a common thing? Yes. And how do I get my singing back to where it once was? Time, basically. If you have had the flu, and especially if you lost your voice, you're coughing a lot, really fatiguing, and just getting a lot of vocal fold irritation and stuff like that, a lot of mucus and all that kind of stuff. Much less if you took any meds while you're doing this, and that could have some sort of ancillary effects. It's going to take time. Be gentle. Stay hydrated. If I lose my voice, my vocalization for the day, not the whole day, but my beginning spot might be something to the effect of wee, 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 wee. and then I take a 5-minute break. And then I come back. Or not. It really depends on the level of fatigue and damage that the cold did. So be patient, take your time. Better to be patient in the beginning and then watch as your pace of recovery accelerates later on than to try to go too hard at the beginning and end up delaying your recovery even further. And I know that you're long over the cold and the flu at this point, but I'm specifically speaking towards the quality of your voice. My larynx seems to rise no matter what I do. Are there any particular techniques you have found effective for keeping the larynx low or neutral, especially as one goes higher in range? And related, what would you recommend as a good practice regimen for a beginner, i.e. time per day, days per week, and how soon may one start to see progress? If your larynx is lifting, it's almost certainly due to old habits. Try your exercises descending. You may have to start in your head voice range with a rather head voicey kind of sound. You, coming back to a neutral position when you are below the secondo passaggio in the exercise. Work only the descending for a while until it's consistent. You can monitor with a light touch, not holding, just light touch to monitor. Better still is to use a mirror and visually monitor the position of the larynx. Beginning practices depends a lot on the beginner. Generally speaking, 10 to 15 minutes of vocalizations plus whatever you're singing. For the beginning vocalist, however, it's sometimes more advantageous to have more time on the vocalizations and less on repertoire, because the repertoire can often perpetuate old habits that aren't efficacious for their singing. You'll have to be the judge of that. What is the biggest mistake you see with new singers? I think I just said it, actually. That's rather convenient. I didn't set that up. It's fun singing songs. That's mostly why and how we get into this thing. But if we have bad habits, they generally get embedded into the way that we sing a given song. So you might go in for your hour lesson and come out of it with a lot, more balanced singing, but then not really come back to those vocalizations and do too much of the song work and basically prolong the period of time till you're going to start to see progress from your vocalization practice. So beginners too frequently want to jump directly into the repertoire, or they want to skip over steps in the development of the voice. It just ends up taking longer in the end. Aside from that, I feel that too frequently beginning vocalists want to immediately know what their vocal type is, what's their voice range. And this is unfortunately putting the cart before the horse. Unlike a lot of other instruments, we have to learn how to use it before we're going to really understand what it is. The difference is between some tenors and some baritones is a semitone. Not a lot of difference. If you don't have good vowel alignment, you're just guessing. It's just that simple. So why guess? There's no reason to guess. And quite frankly, if you're singing popular music, it's more relevant to learn how to use your voice than it is to know what the fuck is. What the fuck it is. What the fuck is. Anyway, because the fuck is a German system developed to help you pick opera roles. One might argue it doesn't even relate to us. That being said, it's nice to know what we end up with, but too soon in the process just creates problems. If you've got a vocalist who thinks they're a baritone, they can arbitrarily lower their primo passaggio, start the process of modifying the voice to get a good transition across the secondo passaggio when you get there. And basically be overbalancing their voice with too much cricothyroid activity, too much head voice activity, too low, and getting really poor results from their singing. Conversely, you can have people who think that they're tenors, or what, any of the other Fox really, but think they're tenors, and they're pushing their voice to go higher and higher in the chest voice with the erroneous idea that your Fox is defined by the highest chest voice note you can sing. It's not. It is defined in part, not even in totality, but in part, by the most balanced point of transition between thyroarytenoid dominance and cricothyroid dominance. If you get into the habit of pushing that point higher and higher and higher, you are obscuring the naturally occurring point of transition. You are making the job of identifying your Fox, your voice type, harder and harder. And you're gonna have to relearn all of that balance in order to really find out what your Fox is. So again, soapbox removed, my apologies. Last question, I'm pretty sure. Yes. I don't want to bring up Dylan. Thank you for that. But could you talk about Ray Charles? Just your opinion. He himself didn't even want to discuss his own voice. It was too personal. It was all intuition for him, he said. But that leaves us with nothing to learn from. If you analyze him classically, he breaks all the rules, but nobody would ever call him anything else but a great singer. Or not. Couple thoughts here. I now realize I should have gone and listened to some Ray Charles before I started this video. Because I haven't listened to Ray Charles in a long time, but what I remember is just loving his voice. And I don't much care about whether or not he breaks the rules. He's just doing Ray Charles. And it works. It worked, because I believe he's long gone. It worked for Ray Charles, and that's all that really matters. And the same is true for you as well. If your voice is doing for you what you want it and need it to do, then there is no one else that you have to answer to. It's your voice. If, however, you want to be able to make music with other people, then singing in tune is a good thing to be able to do. Because if you can't sing in tune, then you're only ever going to be singing solo. Because no one else could ever sing with you. Unless intonation's not a requirement, in which case then, that's fine too. I don't put a lot of stock in vocalists' self-analyses, particularly when they're really famous and they say that it's all intuition. Because it's like, I feel like there's this thing where professional singers don't want to talk about having coaches. Professional athletes all have coaches. They're like all over the sides of the fields, I think, when you watch, if one watches professional sports or sports in general, there's always like coaches running all over the place. They're like this place and that place. And, tennis folks will have coaches that are in the stands and like the cameras will pan to them and they'll talk about it. But for some reason, there is this mythos around the voice that I was just made, and this is what it is, and it's always been this way. And there are those that don't have coaches, and that's great. But then again, for every one of those, there's probably as many or more, Pavarotti comes to mind, who was getting lessons from the time he was 5. I mean, that's a long time to have lessons. No wonder that when you put that amount of energy and effort into, and you get a little lucky in that he had, a build that really suited this, you get what he had, which was remarkable, phenomenal, unbelievable, beautiful. If you like that sort of thing. If you don't, that's fine too. Ray Charles worked for Ray Charles. My hope in this channel is always to enable you, the listener and hopefully singer, to find what works for you or to acquire the skills so that you can then find what works for you. So I thought Ray Charles' music was fantastic. I haven't gone back and listened to him as an adult professional vocal person. But I'm kind of due for another reaction video, so perhaps I'll think about that and maybe consider doing one on one of his tunes. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I enjoy this. I hope this finds you well, and I hope that you're washing your hands and keeping your hands away from your face. If you are an essential worker, I thank you and hope that you are as safe as you can be. My name is Jeff. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. Hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.